as we go through this subject. Now, okay, cremation. Let's talk about it. First of all, one of the reasons it's so popular is because it's less expensive. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money. The cost of a full service grave plot, marker, can easily cost between $9,000 and $15,000 to bury somebody. I don't know about you, but I'm not worth that. I'm really not. In the past 30 years, funeral expenses have risen by 227%. Yeah, funeral expenses have risen by 227%. Now, your paycheck hasn't risen by 227%, I guarantee you that. But I think a lot of people look at cremation as a dishonorable way of disposing a body. The concept that we have is, in the Bible times, only people in God's disfavor were burned after death. And this is simply not true. Now, let's consider this. For example, when King Saul of Israel and his 3 sons were killed in battle, their corpses remained in enemy territory and were treated dishonorable. Hearing the situation, faithful Israelite warriors retrieved the body of Saul and his sons, burned them, and buried the remains. Now, this is what they did. They burned Saul and his 3 sons and then buried what remained afterwards, buried it in the ground. You can find this story in 1 Samuel 31, 8 through 13. Now, let's look at the response of David, King David back then, when he found out about this. And David, now this is 2 Samuel 2 and verse 5, and David sent messengers unto the men who had done this thing, and said unto them, Blessed be ye of the Lord, that you have shown this kindness unto your Lord, even unto Saul, and have buried him. That is, they buried him after they burned their bodies, and what little bit remained they buried. Okay. And now the Lord show kindness and truth unto you, and I will also requite you this kindness, because you have done this thing. So to me, what this verse is telling me is that cremation, burning the remains of a body, is not a dishonorable way to dispose of a body. It's not. Now, we have to understand, what we have to understand is what happens when you die, and how does God put it all back together again. You know, we need to understand this, and this will help you in this understanding of cremation and burning the remains of a body. In Genesis 3 and verse 19, it says, In the sweat of your face shall you eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for dust you are, and dust you shall return. Now, cremation actually speeds this process up. That's the dust process, you know. But as we look at people's death and how they die, I mean, I think of the Columbia disaster, the space shuttle, that basically those people just sort of vaporized in tremendous heat, I would imagine. You think about people that died at sea, maybe eaten by a shark or something like that. And the scripture begins to talk about the resurrection chapter. And the resurrection chapter, 1 Corinthians 15, is critical in your spiritual understanding of the Bible and what happens when you die, and how will God put it all back together again. It says in 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 35, But some men will say, How are the dead raised, and what body do they have? Paul's response, You fool. That which you sow is not quickened except it die. Now that's sort of a powerful response there. You know, you idiot, you ought to know better, okay? You're foolish for being so concerned about how the dead bodies are disposed of, whether they're eaten by a shark, whether they're vaporized, whether they're burned up. It really doesn't matter. He goes on, that which you sow is not quickened except it die, okay? Now, in order to live again, you have to first die. Now, none of us like the sound of that. I don't like the sound of that. None of us like the sound of that. None of us like the thought of dying. But in order to live again, we must first die.